Welcome to Midlife Marriage Mastery, where we talk about all things relationships and long-term relationships and trying to get better at them, to master some of the skills that you may not have mastered in the past. So that's what we're here to do today. And this is today I have a guest, a very special guest. Her name is Catherine Pierce. And this is the first interview that I've done with another woman who has been married almost as long as I have been married. And so very long-term marriage. And I want to read her bio because I want to give you a little idea of who Catherine is and and then we're going to talk about her long-term marriage with her husband Tab. All right, so here we go. Catherine Pierce is the president of Caliber Security Partners, where she leads a premier cybersecurity firm alongside her husband and business partner, Tab Pierce. Her nonlinear professional journey includes years as a stay-at-home mom and caregiver before she successfully scaled a thriving cybersecurity talent business. Beyond security, Catherine is the co-owner of Networked Live along with her husband Tab, and she is the host and owner of the Empower and Elevate conference for female entrepreneurs held in Phoenix, Arizona twice a year. Driven by a philosophy that leadership is rooted in service and trust, she is dedicated to helping entrepreneurs build meaningful relationships and empowering women to thrive in both business and life. She and Tab have been married 38 years this August, and they have 4 children and 10 grandchildren. And they are still very happy. Wow.
Yeah.
And I've heard Catherine say that if things between her and Tab are in one of those down times, she just doesn't feel herself until they are fully in tune again. And I can totally relate to that. Catherine also happens to be my mastermind buddy. So we meet weekly and we talk about all things life and business. And she's going to share her story with us today. And we're going to find out how this lovebird couple keeps things strong and happy. Welcome, Catherine. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Lisa. It's so wonderful to be here, and I'm excited to talk about this. It's, I think it's really needed. Even as I watch our kids, because we have 4 children, 3 of them are married, and they've all 3 of them have been married, 10 or more years, and it's interesting to see the dynamic between the two of them and where they're at, because they're in the thick of it raising kids and things like that. And to be able to, we're completely past that. We're on to the grandkids phase. Obviously, our youngest grandchild is 5. And so it's a different dynamic being a grandparent, which by the way is amazing, than it is. I mean, I love being a mom, but it's just different. You're just not in the weeds.
Right, right.
And so I love the topic of being, you're being with your partner, being with your husband and wife, whatever it is, for the long term, because a lot of times I feel like people think marriage is a disposable thing. Like if it doesn't work out, well, I can always get a divorce.
Sure. That is so true. And it is a reality that divorce is an option and sometimes it's necessary. But I think that it's it's important to know that you can survive difficult
Yes.
things, right? Um, and so one of the difficult things that you had to survive was a financial disaster, I think, if you could put it that way.
Oh, absolutely. It was a disaster.
Yeah. So I love this story because you and Tab have shared it publicly. It's not like, we're telling secrets here.
Right.
But it's so inspiring to hear this story and how you two weathered through some really tough times. So why don't you share that first and then we'll go
Okay.
from there? Yeah.
Okay, that sounds
Yeah.
great.
Okay.
So, it hit us, I think it was around 2016, and what happened was Tab came home from work. I was a stay-at-home mom, and I was taking care of his mom at the time, who had congestive heart failure. So, and then we had still had one child at home. She was like 17 or ish, and Tab owned a cybersecurity company, and he ran it. And I remember he came home from work one day early, and he was almost kind of like white as a ghost. I knew something was wrong just by looking at him and the fact that he was home as early as he was. And he came, we went inside the house, and I asked him what was wrong. And he said, I just had a meeting with our, at the time, he was the president of the company, and he basically kind of, he had been telling Tab that things weren't going well, and we had, there was just lots of things in play, and I don't think Tab wanted to realize that it was true, and so he finally on this time realized it, and we were $750 in debt, for
750,000.
thousand, sorry, yes,
Yeah.
$750,000 in debt, just company debt, which of course was tied to us personally. And then we were personally about $250,000 in debt. And for the business, 250,000 of that debt was to the IRS. So a lot of people were telling Tab, close your business, go get a job, a regular, be an employee, basically. And Tab was like, that's not going to help me, because IRS, for one thing, doesn't forgive debt. And they were
Yeah.
like, declare bankruptcy and all this stuff. And when he told me that, because I had no idea at the time, I mean, I knew a little bit about our personal debt, but I didn't know that he had signed a promissory note for like a hard money loan, that was making us personally responsible for it. And I found, he didn't tell me that. I found the papers, like I was cleaning up our bedroom or something, and I found the papers, and I was like, what's this? And he's like, oh, don't worry about it. Caliber's going to take care of it. We're not going to, it'll be paid off. Don't worry about it. This is probably a year, maybe before, 6 months before. And that didn't happen. And so he told me that. And for a good 3 weeks, because it just hadn't sunk in for him how serious this was, he would come home from work and just like sit on the couch and stare at the TV. Though he wasn't watching it, he was just like in his head and just consumed by this crap fest that we were in. And of course, I was trying to be strong and be a comfort to him and not freak out. But on the inside, I was totally freaking out, because at the time, I'm a stay-at-home mom. I don't have any way to bring in money personally to our household. And so I felt very helpless, but at the same time, I wanted to keep a stiff upper lip for him. And just, I knew that there's a lot of people out there that would kick their husband when they're down. How could you do this to us? Or even, that's it, I'm out. I'm not doing this. I'm not dealing with this. But Tab and I, when we were married, I was like 3 days past my 20th birthday, and he was 22. And when we got married, we knew that it was, in our faith, it was forever. We weren't, we're committed to each other. We're committed to our relationship with God. And this is a permanent thing. And so,
Yeah.
so I've never thought about, this is hard, let's get a divorce. We've never even talked about divorce, because that's
Yeah.
just not an option for us. I mean, it would be if, there was abuse or something like that going on. So I don't want to say that across the board you stay married no matter what. But for
Right. Right.
us, we've always had a mutual love and respect for each other. And so when this hit, I mean, I was devastated, and I'm like, how are we going to solve this? I didn't need to say anything to Tab, because he was beating himself up all by himself, and
Yeah.
just feeling the weight of, how am I going to pay our employees? How are we going to pay our own bills? And, just all of it. So we, because I had to take care of my mother-in-law and our daughter, and then at the time we lived on a 5-acre farm, we called it. So there was a lot of upkeep to do.
Yeah.
And So what we did in the short term to help bring money into the house so that we could buy groceries and try and pay our mortgage and things like that was we took turns driving Uber. So he would work all day, he'd get home, I'd go drive Uber for a couple of hours in the evening, and then on the weekends I would drive Uber during the daytime, and then he would drive Uber during the night hours.
Wow.
And
Okay.
yes, and I just have to put a plug in here. We lived in Seattle at the time. Being an Uber driver in Seattle is not for the faint of heart.
Well, Catherine, you look pretty delicate on the outside, but you are pretty tough on the inside. I mean, you're really a beautiful woman
Thank
and
you.
very feminine and all of that. And I think you have a brain of steel or something like or a soul of steel or something that there's a strength there. And I'm curious where that comes from. I'm guessing it comes from maybe faith or hard times growing up. I don't know. Tell us.
It's both. It's both. I grew up in a very tumultuous, sometimes abusive environment. Not for me personally, but my mom was a victim of domestic violence. My younger brother and sister were often abused, and so I remember one time my grandmother telling me, "Honey," because my mom's third, she was in and out of a lot of marriages, which is also another reason why I'm committed to staying married. But
Hmm.
I remember this one, my mom's third husband was a drill sergeant in the military and had not been around kids. My mom had 4 kids, and he came into this marriage. I think I was about 10 or 11 years old when they started dating. So all of a sudden, he's got 4 kids that he has to manage. And how he managed people was by yelling at them, and so there was a lot of yelling, and and I was sensitive, and I still am. Like, if something is hurting me or bothering me, the first thing I do is cry, and it drives me nuts, but that's just how it's been since birth.
I'm
So
similar. You and I are a
yes,
lot alike that way. Yeah.
yes,
Yes.
definitely. And so I remember my grandmother telling me, "Honey, think of it as water off a duck's back." And that visual helped me so much because I was just like, you know what? I'm not going to take this personally. And it took lots and lots of years of doing it. But also, I was raised in a time where you didn't voice your opinion. If you thought something was unfair or you didn't want to do something, it wasn't, nowadays where it's like there's a negotiation process or talking it through. It was like, you do this and you do it now. And so growing up in that environment and then that era, I had to learn to be aware of my situation, obviously, but I was making mental notes all along about how it was going to be when I had my own household and family. So, and that was really, it was, sucked at the time, obviously, but it was really helpful because I had a clear picture in my mind of, when I got married, there was not going to be shouting and slamming doors and screaming at each other. There wasn't going to be, the instability. My mom had to work because she was in and out of marriages and she experienced mental illness. And so there was a lot of instability with that, just not knowing like what mood we would be dealing with. She was bipolar. And back then they didn't have the kind of medication and help that they do now.
Yeah.
So I think that helped me to be a real resilient,
Yeah.
and and then of course my faith and just knowing that having a close relationship with God and with my savior, and knowing that I can turn to them when all else fails. Hopefully I have learned to do it before I think all else has failed, but it's a combination of
Sure.
the both. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I think when you're immersed in your faith and you're constantly building faith muscles, your belief muscles and understanding truth and reality and all that. And I love how you pitched in and helped Tab and didn't get on his case. And you know, I, you know who Mel Robbins is, right?
Yes.
Yeah, she's so famous. And she did have a period of time where her husband's business was tanking and she took it personally and she got mad and all this. She tells about that pretty publicly. And but she had a turnaround somewhere along the line. I don't know if it's something someone said to her or something she read, but she realized, you know what? I can't get him to change. He's not the one that needs to change. It's me who needs to change, you know?
Yes.
And so when we take ownership of our relationship and we, you know, we may have a commitment, like I love your commitment to your marriage, which my husband and I have the same. It's like
Right.
we got married later than you did. We were 28 and 29 respectively. But at the same time, there was a lot of divorce in our family too, in my family. And like statistically, I did not look
Yeah.
like a good prospect.
Oh my gosh, me either. Right.
So, um, well, let's go back to so anyway, to finish the story, you came out on top of that. You recovered your business, you recovered your life. Do you just want
Yes.
to talk about the end of that a little bit?
You bet. And
Yeah.
so it took us 26 months, but Tab created a plan for himself basically by reverse engineering what he needed to do in order to get out of debt for both our family and for the business. And and you know, he worked like a dog. I started my mother-in-law passed away like in April of 2018. And when she passed away, and by then our daughter was 18 and kind of doing her own thing. She still lived at home, but was independent. I was kind of faced with this, what am I going to do now? You know, because a lot of my friends who were stay-at-home moms kind of not really retired, but they use their free time in volunteering and things like that. And I decided I wanted to have a career. And so I started doing cybersecurity recruiting. And I went to that because my husband's business is cybersecurity. And so I figured if I got stuck on anything like terminology or things like that, because I didn't know anything about cybersecurity,
Yeah.
I could always ask him. And so I started doing cybersecurity recruiting, but it was really Tab engineering everything as far as reverse engineering his goals and how we were going to get out of this mess. And he was just so determined and so driven. And I just appreciate that he was all in on getting us out of the situation that, you know, we both had got ourselves into, but he took the major responsibility for.
Yeah. Well, that's such a great story. Number one of your love and devotion for each other and the commitment and the help that you provided. Um, and there was something else I was going to say about that. Um, but what I do know is that you and Tab are still madly in love. And,
Yes.
you know, I see on Facebook, Tab, Instagram, whatever, you know, Tab's always posting pictures of you and saying how wonderful you are and all that. And I just,
Yes.
I think that's wonderful.
I
So,
do too. It's very sweet. And it's funny because when we were first dating, he was very complimentary and things like that. And I would always tease him. I'm like, oh, that's a good line, you know, when we were first dating. And he would be like, it's not a line. And he brought that up the other day. He's like, so do you still think all this is just a line? And I'm like, no, I buy it now.
I know it's true now.
Yes, exactly. You know,
Right.
38 years later.
So yeah, you're going to celebrate 38 in August.
Actually, it'll be 39 in August.
Oh, 39 in August.
Yes.
All right. Wow. Um,
I
let's
need credit
see.
where credit is due. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, for sure. Well, so you and Tab are business partners as well as marriage partners. How do you
Yes.
draw the line between your professional collaboration and your romantic partnership so that one doesn't swallow the other?
You know, that's a really interesting question because we both love what we do. And so for us, and that's something that I did not understand before I started working outside the home. I didn't understand him as an entrepreneur and business owner, why when he came home at 6 o'clock or whatever it was, that he couldn't just turn it off. And I didn't get it until I started working and I was running my own business. And then I was like, I had this aha moment and I was like, okay, totally get it now because this is fun. And I mean, you know, it's not always beautiful, but I don't mind, sitting on the couch next to him and we're both, dorking around on LinkedIn or making connections or sending emails or whatever. Whereas when we had kids and I was the stay-at-home person, I was like, can't you turn it off, dude? Give me some attention, not that he was ever negligent, but just it's been so beautiful, and it's really helped our relationship evolve actually because we do work both of our businesses together, and we have very different working styles. He's type A as far as like super organized, super dedicated. I'm a little more fly by the seat of my pants, whatever happens, not really whatever happens, but I don't have my day super structured out. He structures his down to the hour. He's been doing that since 2016. And to me, I'm like, that's a little over the top, but he gets 80% of his goals accomplished every year. So there is a good, you know what I mean? He's got a proven process. Me, not
He's
so much.
got a system. He's got a system. Yeah.
But as far as our relationship goes, I don't know that there's never I don't feel like there's a separation between our romantic relationship and our business relationship. It's like everything's intertwined. And
Mm.
we both get each other so much. Like when I was putting together the Empower and Elevate conference that just happened like three weeks ago or so, I was working lots of hours. I was not, cleaning the house. I wasn't making dinner. I wasn't, doing all those things because I was so focused and needing to get these things taken care of. And, now he's going to be having a men's conference here in a couple of months. And so he's working on his website and, things like that. So we've always been really, really good, no matter whether it was taking care of my grandmother when she had Alzheimer's and we had 4 kids under the age of 10, or whether it was me caring for his mom, towards the end of her life, and just, especially that last year, just really, hunkering down and kind of guarding whatever little time we could have together to make sure that we had that. So I don't really know. Sometimes I feel like there aren't boundaries as far as, sometimes like I will just, especially as I've been getting over this virus, like I am done by the end of the day and he's still working and he'll say, oh, can you tell me about this or this? And I'm kind of like, no, I'm done for the day. You don't understand. But most of the time when I'm not sick, it's just like, oh yeah, and we'll, do that. We do set appointments with each other when we want to have meetings so that, we have structured time, like to talk about, since we have a couple different businesses plus the conferences that we do. So like tonight, he's like, can we talk after, this meeting at this time about Network Live and how we're going to, kind of revamp that. And so I love that he is so organized in that way instead of just, kind of, because it would be easy to derail me because I'm very distractible. Let's say it that way.
Yeah.
And then just to go down, that road and then not accomplish what I really need to get accomplished. So it's been a great learning experience for both of us because we do have that different working style. And I am more patient, I guess you would say, than he is. He would used to get, when we first started working together, he would get irritated with me because, I didn't know how many people we had registered for a particular event, or, I wasn't keeping the statistics. He's the statistic guy. I am not. I'm, hey, let's get people together and get business owners together to get to know each other and collaborate and things like that. And I think he either resigned himself to the fact that that's not my wheelhouse and that's really not what I'm interested in. I'm fine at doing, sending out the email posts and doing that kind of thing, which he hates. Like he would rather gouge his eyes out than have to do automations or sequencing or anything like that. So we really complement each other well. And as
Yeah.
far as keeping the romance alive, I think that we have a better relationship now that our kids are out of the house and it's just us again, um, than we have ever had. Like we love each other and are just so much more deeply than even before we had kids or when our kids were little. we're able to be really present with each other, and we're able to just appreciate each other and the time that we have together, and so every day is, it's funny because it sounds cliche, but holidays roll around, Valentine's Day or whatever, and we don't do big things, like it's not, we don't have to plan this extravagant dinner or whatever. He usually will get me flowers or something like that, but really, honestly, every day is just such a blessing that we don't really
Mm.
need to like go out of our way to celebrate, because we honestly celebrate every day with each other. And I'm so grateful for that, because his dad died at 60 from heart disease, basically. And his mom was without his dad. She did end up remarrying and had a wonderful relationship with her second husband, but I just think, man, Tab's over 60 right now, and just barely. And so he'll be 61 later this year. But I think, man, I am so grateful for every day that we have together, because if we were his mom and dad, he'd be gone already.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So I don't even know where I want to go with this because I just see so much. Well, there's so much love there. That's one thing. There's so much love there, and I think that is important. But I think it was Esther Perel who said, I'm probably going to be married 6 times, but hopefully it's to the same man because right,
Yes.
right, because over the years things change, like you said, like you were in love when you were young, but
Yes, of course.
that has way deepened.
Yes.
You've been through the process of having kids. You've been through, you had this role, he had that role, and then you've been through business together, and now you're by yourselves and finding joy in just being together now on a deeper level, in a
Yeah,
different way, right?
that would
And
definitely.
but I also think that that takes work in a sense. Like when you
Yes.
were talking earlier about being aware that you're going to let the thing roll off your back, or being aware that you're not going to take things personally. Can you think of things that you've incorporated into your relationship that has kept the fire burning or just built respect, or like what are some habits? What are some things that you do on a regular basis that keep the love alive?
One thing that we do, I mean, because we sit on a couch next to each other if we're down watching TV. Sometimes we'll do work down there while we're watching TV. And we'll just reach over and hold hands for a couple of seconds, or
Mm.
I'll put the computer aside and just say, "Can I snuggle you for a couple minutes?"
Mm.
And that's something that I had to learn when we were first married. I was not one that said, "I love you a lot," or was very demonstrative. And I had to train myself to remember, hey, I need to say, because for him, he needed that. He grew up with that verbal recognition and affirmations and things like that. And for me, in the environment that I grew up in, people would do lip service but treat you a completely different way. And so I was like, I that was something that I had to train myself to do, because I wanted to reach him where he was at. So it wasn't like I was expecting him to change the way that his love language was. I needed to meet him in the middle. And so and he's done the same with me. My love language is service. So that's the best way that when I'm trying to that's how I show my love, is by doing things for people and helping them out and trying to lift their load, that kind of a thing. And so, in fact, when our kids were little, like Mother's Day would roll around, and they would say, "Mom, what do you want for Mother's Day?" And I'd say, I would love it if you would weed the backyard." And they would be like, "Please, Mom, can I just buy you something?"
That's so cute. I love that.
Yes.
That's my
Yes.
husband's love language for sure. Not mine. But we both share one. One is quality time.
Yes.
So we love sitting and talking. We love having a bottle of wine together and just sitting and talking. And he does love acts of service, and I love affection. So here's the thing. He's not affectionate, my husband.
Mhm.
Um, and one time I mentioned that to him. I said, you're not very affectionate. And he goes, yeah, I know. He goes, but I'm glad you are. And so,
Aw,
yeah, so it's like it's good to recognize your love language. And also, um, if you're not good at it, you could try it, right? Or
yes,
you can,
yes.
yeah, or just take note and don't take it personally. Like if your love language is affection and you're not getting that directly from your husband, you maybe you need to reach out and get that affection. Like if
Yes,
you can,
that's
like you said, you can't depend on him to be who he's not, right? Like,
right.
but there are ways. And so for you to say, could I have a snuggle right now? It's just such a beautiful way to ask for something that you need when you need
Yes.
it.
Yes, exactly. And having that conversation, because a lot of times I think that, and we've had that conversation in our marriage, um, and you need to have that conversation. You need to figure it out so that, you know, it- they're not mind readers. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
so you're not
And I
guessing. Yeah.
exactly. And I can't read his mind. So I will say, if we're feeling out of sorts or something, we'll both check in with each other. Okay, so what is going on? Did I say something to hurt your feelings? Did I not do something or say something? And 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 for me, I'm a peacemaker at heart. So I'm usually not going to take up the sword unless it's something that is very important to me. But with Tab, and he's gotten way better over the years, but just with the stress of having kids and working and all the things, he would often I would do something or not do something, and it would hurt his feelings because he would take it personally. And he's gotten to the point now where he will be logical about it, and he'll say something. He'll basically ask himself, what are the chances that she's doing this on purpose? And which is zero. I mean, I
Yeah.
might be oblivious, which is probably the reason that that I do something or he gets his feelings hurt, but it's not out of maliciousness. I'm not a spiteful person. And so when he can kind of step out of the emotional part of it, and this is for both of us, when we can step out of the emotional initial hurt or reaction or anger, frustration with each other, and we get logical, then we're like, okay, we can do this. You know what I mean? We can get past this and we can talk about it. And I mean, it'll still be emotional, but once we're able to talk about it without the emotions or kind of setting that aside, not blaming each other, not finger pointing, but just, this is how I felt when did this, or you didn't react this way, or what have you. Um, then it helps your relationship. And by having those conversations, your relationship deepens and that love and respect for each other just grows. And it's really, really beautiful.
Yeah. I have learned I have learned to clarify. When my
Mm,
husband says something or does something, or I'm feeling that pang of, did I feel like my feelings were just hurt, but let me just check that out. Like what is the thinking behind my feeling that's making me feel like he hurt me or something? And
yeah,
then so I usually just try to get clarity, like, hey, when you said that, what did you mean by that? Or,
that's very good.
so I think that it sounds like you and Tab have really developed some skills that a lot of people don't have yet.
Yes.
And and you recognize that there's an emotional piece of you and there's a logical piece of you, the front brain. And when you get the emotional piece under control, then the logical brain can take over and it just makes more sense of things, right?
Yes,
So
absolutely.
but like you said, it's not easy. You have to practice. You have to do it over and over and over again, and it never stops. I mean,
No.
what's interesting is because from the outside looking in, it's like, oh, Catherine and Tab have a perfect marriage. There's not a thing. They never fight. They never have issues. You know, tell people that's not true. Everybody has issues,
Yes,
and
absolutely.
I think men in particular, they mellow out with age. So
Mhm.
if you can make it through the midlife period where it's really
Yes.
tough, where stress is high and things are really tough. And if you can get through that and if you can learn the skills, then on the other side of that, there's more peace and understanding and mellowness. Like
Yes.
you're not going to get the same types of reactions now when the kids are
Right.
grown and out of the house.
Right.
So,
And I'm not going to react the same way because I'm not having to, make dinner and help kids with homework. And, I used to call that like the witching hour because it was just like, I'm trying to do my thing. The kids have, sports and they're trying to do homework and, we've got to get all this stuff done. And, there was stress. I did yell at my kids. I was frustrated with my husband, why
yep.
aren't you helping more? But yet he was the only provider of our family. And so he was working. And I
Yeah.
remember I was talking to my daughter-in-law because they've got three kids. They have twin 6-year-old daughters and an 8-year-old daughter. And our son, works this job that has a lot of hours that he was in a job where he was traveling 50% of the time, maybe 60% of the time. And so she was feeling the single parent role a lot. And I remember sending her a text saying, a lot of times because she and I were both in the same faith, and I said, a lot of times you were raised that, grow up and you're going to get married and have a family and then you're going to live happily ever after. And I said, nobody talks about how frustrating raising kids can be. I mean, yes, it's beautiful and it's joyous, but it is also freaking hard and really messy. And
It
if
is.
and frustrating and all of those things. And I said, I think there needs to be more conversation around that nobody else's life is perfect, and they may be able to put on a good face, on at Sunday at church or, what have you. But if you really get to know somebody and get to know their family, they are going through junk just like you are. They have probably is different, but it's nobody has a perfect life, and everybody is struggling with something.
Yeah.
And if you can recognize that in your spouse too, they're dealing with something too. It's if you can look outward instead of they're not doing this, they're not doing that, why aren't they doing this, they should have helped with this. um and you're thinking about, okay, where are they coming from in this situation? Then it completely turns it around because Tab is coming from, I got to provide for my family. I've got 4 kids, who are in sports and constantly doing stuff and needing new clothes and all this other stuff. And I'm sitting at home keeping the home fires burning and all that. So, if he doesn't mow the lawn one Saturday, I'm not going to get on his back about that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
His mind is somewhere else, and that's totally fine. And so that's kind of how we've always done things. He would look at me when we had little kids at home and just say, especially when I was taking care of my grandmother who had Alzheimer's and she was living with us, he would walk in the door and look at me and say, "You need to go have a break. Just
Mm,
go to the library for an hour. Go take a drive, whatever, go for a walk." And learning to read each other and or at least try to read each other and notice when something's off with your partner. Or it's just the same with your kids, tuning into how are they in the normal day to day and what's different. And I can't even imagine being a teenager today and all the stuff that they have to deal with. And so if we have our oldest grandson is 11. So he's just hitting into the teenage years and things like that. So if he is, a little snarky or whatever, I'm not going to take it personally because he's having to deal with social media, his friends, living in a co-parenting household or 2 different co-parenting households. And, so just, I
yeah.
always feel like give somebody the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah. For sure. And I will say too that society has changed a lot. You and I took on more traditional roles. Many
Yes.
couples today they're both working, they're both bringing home the bacon, they're both running around, they're both cleaning the house, they're all the
Yeah.
things, right? And also it's become a very individualistic society. So, it's
Yes.
like me versus him instead of us as a team.
Right.
So I think that you and Tab have really developed this teamwork, this us versus
Yes.
them kind of thing, or versus me and him. So before we end, because this is, I think it's been very helpful to hear your story and some of the tools that you've used and your point of view on all of this. Um, so before we end, tell me, what was one thing you really that drew you to Tab in the beginning, and what is one thing that draws you to him now?
His sense of humor, for sure. I mean, he's good looking, but it was really that was what drew me to him. Was he always makes me laugh. And I don't think I laughed a lot growing up. As you know, that our household was just kind of more tense, and those moments were fewer and farther between. And Tab is flippant, and he's sarcastic, and he says things that shouldn't be said, but some people are usually thinking. You know what I mean? Things like that. And so he makes me laugh, and that is what he can disarm me if I'm feeling upset about something. He can talk me off the ledge. But his humor and just his positive outlook on life, and just the way that he shows up for people, even aside from myself, that's what just I just admire that so much in him, and I just love it about him, because life is fun, and we have a good time together.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, early on, it was a sense of humor, and it still is a sense of humor. Would
It
you say
is.
that?
Yes, we have so much fun together. Yes.
I love that. I would say that's the same for my husband. He makes me laugh a lot too. And you know, he's not a big dancer, but when we get out on the dance floor, like at a wedding or something, and we're doing the slow dance, he's always whispering something funny in my ear.
Yes.
And it gets me through the dance. And it's just really it's great to have someone who has that kind of wit,
Yes.
it's
Yes.
fun.
Very
Yeah.
quick-witted.
Well, Catherine, this has really been fun. I think it's been enlightening. I found it enlightening, but thank you so much for being my guest.
Thank you for
And
having me.
yeah, and just tell people where they can find you, and if there's anything you'd like to promote right now, what's going on in your life.
Well, Network Live, we're having our business networking mixer tomorrow night. It's always the second Tuesday of the month, and you can find our events calendar at networkedlive.com.
Okay.
If anybody wants to reach out to me directly, you can email me at Catherine, and well, you can see how my name is spelled, Catherine at networkedlive.com. And, we have our hats in a lot of different things, and I love connecting with people. So if anybody wants to connect with me and just have a chat, or troubleshoot, or you need an introduction, I'm here to do that. So I would love that.
Okay. And you're on Facebook and you're on Instagram.
And
Um, at Catherine Pierce, Catherine underscore Pierce or something like
I think
that.
it's Kath.Pierce, like on
Kath.Pierce.
Instagram and on Facebook. Yeah.
Okay. And then your Empower and Elevate, that's going to be in the fall. So you'll
Yes.
talk
November
about that
13th.
later. November
Yes.
13th. Okay.
Yes. So, and it'll be in Mesa again. And it's going to be a fantastic day. We're changing things up a little bit. So, you can find out more about that by going to our website. And I believe there's a tab for it. Empower and Elevate Conference is the website. And there's a tab that it says season 2. And so that's kind of what we're calling, as we evolve the Empower and Elevate Conference, from what it was, or what it has been the last 3 years, and where we're taking it in the future. So we're really excited about it.
Oh, that's exciting. Very cool. Well, Catherine, thanks again. And we will be in touch soon.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, everybody. Tune in next time to Midlife Marriage Mastery. Have a wonderful day. Thanks for listening.